So we've talked about work, and we definitely have identified that work is a stressor and a form of overwhelm, and it's seeping into other aspects of our lives like a poison. But also it shows up for us physically too, right? Like we have physical manifestations of stress. And I think you wanted to talk about a couple of those things.
Oh my gosh, you're putting me on the spot.
No,
I don't want to. I will.
Well, I feel like I'm going on tangents, so I want to give you the floor.
Oh, okay. Well, I guess a personal story would be there was a time in my life I was really stressed out. I'm not sure what was the cause. I think it might have been work. And I was getting like panic attacks, like full-blown panic attacks. Like,
yeah,
I was sweating, I was shaking, shortness of breath. I had like a chest pain, dizziness, like tingling. Like it was, I was like not having it. So I needed to find methods to kind of bring me down back because everything is rising and you can feel everything rising. And I really needed to find different ways to cope. So one thing that really helped me, and this for some reason it happened in the winter, I would go with my husband and we would go for a walk like at 1 a.m. in downtown Toronto. Yeah. And the cold air, like we were living in the city at this point. And the cold, fresh air like hitting me and the distraction of the lights and the people and the cars and the buildings just distracted me from inside of my brain. And then I eventually came down. Like that helped me when I was like really feeling like I was losing control in that moment.
Yeah.
Like, yeah, you can do all the breathing exercises, but when you're having an actual attack, not a lot is going to like help you.
It's true. That's why the reality is, in situations where people are acting out of panic, like you literally got to slap them across the face because you just got to like knock that emotion right out of them.
Yeah.
I'm going to put my dad on blast, but I mean, my dad has lived a very wild life, but in his, I don't want to say, maybe 20s, maybe 30s, I don't know, when he was swimming in the ocean with one of his buddies back home, like many moons ago. And I guess his buddy's not a very strong swimmer and he was like drowning or something. And my dad is a swimmer, so he's trying to save him. And his friend was like freaking out. So then he's like, well, shit, he's going to drown the both of us. So he had to like pop him in his face to knock him to like basically get him to calm down to save the both of them. Because in that moment, telling them take a deep breath and all that, it's not going to work. You have to basically slap the shit out of them being like, get it together. And they're like, wait, what? Okay, yes. And that slap of cold air in your face is what you needed in that moment to kind of shake you out of it.
Yeah. And you need to find what works. Like if you feel like you're having a really stressful time, you need to find outlets that work for you. Maybe it's going to exercise. Maybe it's getting more sleep. Maybe it's like eating. Maybe it's talking to someone, staying hydrated, setting boundaries, doing meditation, like whatever it is. If you're feeling super anxious, what else do they recommend? Seeking help, seeing a therapist, trying like mindfulness exercises, changing your perspective, like
I think also, I don't think we got to touch on it. Like there's signs and symptoms of experiencing stress that maybe people don't recognize. Like you're saying you had a panic attack and maybe that for you was the first time you realized that like something was amiss. But there's probably things that we can do to kind of like get like mental and physical checks of ourselves being like, well, this is something I'm noticing about myself. Maybe I need to like reevaluate what's going on in my life that might be driving this behavior.
Yep, exactly. Yeah, but you have to do the 3 R's for anxiety. Recognize, regroup, redirect.
Ah, super helpful. Okay. I was like, rest, relaxation, and retire.
That works too. But that's a good one. We should write that on a shirt.
Yeah. Mert.
But I think as a whole, I'm just a stressful person in general. I think with having my kids, for some reason, I've become a little less stressed because I just don't have time or energy to stress.
Sure. And you're
like I was having
greater. It's about your kids.
Yeah, true. I worry the same, maybe even more. Overwhelm, I don't know, maybe the same, but I feel like I'm definitely a little less stressed, which is weird, but I am.
No, that actually makes sense. I think when we talk about the tools or techniques, what happens as we get older, if we're doing that kind of reflection, is we get to create our own version of not sweating the small stuff. So some things that would have been like major stressors for us now aren't they don't have as much importance. So we've deprioritized what they are in our lives, where it's like, well, I didn't get it done, or, I didn't do this thing. And it's like, but, it's more important that I'm present for my family.
Totally.
So I think, that part changes. So there's always that aspect of managing your time with what is valuable to you and prioritizing those things. And then you touched on, as well as like working on being present in the moment, or like taking that deep breath, or getting slapped in the face, or going out. Like, you need to be able to recognize and regroup to figure out like how to get yourself back on track. But also, I think what we didn't really touch on is if you can't, you should have a support system that helps you do so, whether it's friends or family, or even like from a professional perspective, right? We don't have all the answers, but there's professionals out there that can probably help get us there.
Yeah.
Other things that I think we both talked about is like setting boundaries and learning to say no to things. Like you said, you're a people pleaser. Those things will kill you if you let them. You have to like basically put the oxygen mask on yourself first.
Yeah. Yeah.
Also, I'm guilty of it. Overstimulation of like being on my phone or on the TV or on the computer. Like, one of my rules that I've done that's been helpful for me in terms of like sleeping is like, I don't turn on my TV in my room, or I'm in a dark room right before I go to bed. So I'm not having other stimulus there that like keeps me up at night.
Yeah. It's hard though. It's hard to shut off your brain, right?
Yeah.
At least I find it hard to shut off your brain, especially if you're having a really stressful time or you're in a overwhelming situation.
100%, which I think is why sometimes like doing an activity, I know that when I'm really stressed about something or it's like invading my mind, I need to like pace back and forth. So like whatever that looks like for the person, where it's like, if something is gnawing at you and you feel like you're like crawling out of your skin, like get some physical movement going in some way to help work through whatever it is. Like for you, it was that walk at 1 a.m. Like that can help reset probably your circadian rhythm and kind of bring you down a couple of levels, of course. Nothing is a complete fix. And depending on how severe the situation is, obviously, if you need medical care, then seek it. But that activity may be helpful for some people. One thing that I thought was interesting that I have here in my notes, but maybe that you and I have kind of talked about indirectly, is reevaluating your purpose and like where you are in terms of like the type of job you have, and looking at other development opportunities either in learning or courses to maybe making a switch in your career. It's not possible for everybody, and there's probably like little steps you can take, but sometimes it's just making that decision to be like, you know what, in this industry it's burning me out and I want to try and like switch gears or consider doing that. And sometimes that can be something to consider that I don't think a lot of people consider. It's like, well, this is what I've been doing my whole life and I need to keep doing it. And it's like, but you don't, if you can, right? Like you want to, if you have the brain power, look at other creative solutions or new paths to take.
Or even a new job altogether, right? If your job is like a huge stressor in your life, just find a new job.
Well,
I know it's tough, but
there's probably some value in saying like, really considering if changing your job or your career it meant that you had to take a pay cut, but you were able to have less of a commute time, be able to like do something that didn't completely burn you out. You have to do that calculation and figure out what the trade-offs are that work best for you. I know for me, I made a change early in my career, took a pay cut, and then it's worked out for me as a result. I was in the hole back then, but I did that because I didn't want to be in the industry that I was in.
Right.
Do I have new stresses? Yeah, but that's a whole different story. That's a whole other podcast episode.
How do you manage those stressors when they pop up?
I don't. Honestly, I don't. That's the honest answer.
But you said you pace.
I pace, yeah. But it doesn't help me. It helps. It creates a bit of an outlet for the emotion. But until that deadline happens or passes, I'm going to still be in that state. There's nothing I can do.
Yeah.
All I can do is just like having a child that's maybe throwing a tantrum or something that's like overstimulated. I'm just trying to tire myself out. Right?
Yeah.
Like it for whatever reason, that behavior doesn't change as we get older. I'm like, I'm high strung. I just need to pace and pace and pace until I tucker myself out, or, go for a run or go for a walk. Or weights probably aren't something that I want to do when I feel like very anxious, but some kind of regular activity of like robotic momentum for some reason helps a little bit. Or you have friends that are really like, I'm freaking out, I need you to talk me off the ledge.
Yeah, good one. Yeah. I rely on my friends a lot, and I know it's bad, but sometimes I turn to food too. Right? I'll have, a few too many cookies that night if I'm feeling a little stressed or overwhelmed about something.
Or an alcoholic beverage.
Or sure.
But I had a moment where I was like feeling a bit tuckered out from the week. It was one of those weeks, and had some Baileys on ice. And I'm not going to lie, it definitely helped me. Now, I don't want to do that every time I have that emotion. Exactly.
Well, yeah, exactly. Everything in moderation.
Yeah. There should be more healthier things where you're not relying on it. That's a coping mechanism.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I feel like companies should have more mental health days for people, and people are going through it.
Literally. One of the companies that I worked at had the first Friday of every month was a mental health day. So depending on where you worked in the organization, obviously you still have to like work. And to be quite frank, I never got to take that first Friday off, but I felt like my calendar was a lot less busy or full because a lot of the other parts of the areas of the business would be off. So that I wouldn't have a lot of meetings, and I would have, a little bit more control over my calendar. But it's acknowledging that like life is extremely demanding.
Yeah. I feel like it's just gotten more and more demanding.
Totally. So when you're saying like companies need more mental health days, what I do notice is that companies give you less and less sick days, which I find incredibly interesting.
Mm-hmm.
Like they'll be like, yeah, we provide like such great vacation and time off policies. We give you 2 sick days for the year. 2 sick days?
Wow, 2 sick days. Thank you so much.
Like I remember there'd be a time where you got like 5 to 7 or maybe 10 sick days on top of like vacation. I don't see that anymore at all. So like the expectation is you're sick, you have to work. And I'm like, okay, but if I can work remotely, yeah, I probably won't be 100% if I'm sick and I'm working, but I can probably do a little bit of something. You only come into the
office if
sick?
Your child is sick?
Well, that's another thing too. I think that there probably needs to be like childcare sick days or something.
Exactly, because in the months from October till April, cold and flu season like hits kids so hard.
Yeah. And it's so much easier if somebody can have like a sick kid at home and be working from home versus having to like take the day off. I mean, I know that
how old your kid is.
Yeah. I'm not saying that that's the easiest answer because like depending on how old the kid is, you probably still need to take the day off, but maybe it's only a half day or something. Like I think it just creates more flexibility.
Yeah. But do you have any other like additional tools or strategies we can provide to people?
I have some other ones here. I don't know if they're really valuable, so I'm not going to share them.
She's going to maybe that under lock and key.
Okay, I'll share them for those that maybe buy into it. I don't buy into them, but we talked about breathing techniques kind of, so that's definitely one of them. I have visualization down here as like visualizing yourself in a place where this thing that's creating this overwhelm, whether it's a task or a deadline or an event, has already happened and it was successful. That would never help me. But maybe for those listeners, it might. Positive affirmations, being like, you got this, you can handle this, I'm capable. Those things work when my friends tell me it, but not when I tell myself.
Same. Like I will tell other people that, but not myself.
Yeah, because I'm like, I'm bullshitting. Like, I know.
Exactly.
Oh, one thing. Okay, 2 things that I think we've indirectly commented on is scheduling time for yourself for moments of rest and relaxation, whether get your nails done if you're a female or, have like a dinner or a brunch with some friends, like including those as priorities in your life as events so that you are giving back to yourself as well to de-stress, as long as you find those things stress-free.
Yeah. And I think I need to do that more in my life.
Oh, so do I.
That's a good tip, Krista.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to say one, the other thing is to be mindful of what you're putting in your body and how you're prioritizing what you're eating and like sleeping being like number 1, because a lack of, nutrition and sleep will also create these moments of anxiety and stress and panic attacks. Like literally body is the motor and the engine. So if it's not working, like everything's going to fall apart. I want to also say that sometimes if you're an overachiever, you create stresses for yourself. So I can say that you and I have 9 to 5 commitments and we're doing this podcast, and it's definitely created a bit of moments of overwhelm for us. because we are stretched pretty thin, but we love doing it. So it feels very different than our 9-to-5 corporate life.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
I was going to say something else, but I forgot.
because you're overwhelmed.
Yeah, probably.